Adam, I had a bit of a I called you out a couple of episodes ago.
Oh,
Because well, you see, when I was down in Kentucky last year, um, you neglected to inform me about the insidious voices that can be heard sometimes in the woods by things that should not be seen in Appalachia. And dude, you took me out into them woods. Like, we went into the Red River Gorge. We went out to your out into the mountain behind your house.
Yeah.
And not once did you mention the spooky voices or the mocking voices that can sometimes be heard. And like that whole like retinue of local legend and folklore.
I've got two things to say to you.
I had to find that out with a trending or with a TikTok trend recently, where like people are starting to talk about the things in Appalachian woods that you don't want to encounter, and if you do, you need to get out of them woods. So,
in my defense, haven't you heard me talking about always carrying a gun when I go in the woods, regardless of what I'm doing?
I just thought that was like for animals, not for.
Well, that, but I thought the voices I'm shooting at. But I grew up hearing those kind of things, and it just, when it's entrenched in it's not like it comes up in day-to-day conversation, but those things are just, in the corners of my mind. Like, I forget to mention, kind of like when we were in Bowling Green, and I forgot to mention, oh yeah, John Carpenter is from here.
Yeah. It's almost like setting up, like, it's like, well, I mean, you'll just have to come back.
Yeah, you can't blow it all in one go. You can't get the whole Appalachian experience. And yeah, I mean, this from somebody who spends a lot of time out in the woods during certain seasons hunting and stuff like that. You hear weird things all the time, and if you let your mind kind of run with it and all, it'll mess with you. But yeah, the legends or variations that I've heard is if you hear someone calling your name, don't respond to them, and things like that.
It's so unsettling.
Yeah,
it's like
I'm dead now, so I don't have to worry about that.
Is that? I guess, like, so is it basically just like if you ignore it, it'll go away, or like if you don't acknowledge it, like that's the it's like is it like a bully? Like, is that the tactics that you're supposed to use?
That's what I've always been told. Just ignore it, get away, kind of stuff like that. Don't look into it.
Well, I mean, I guess it's a good thing I found a story for us to cover for this week's episode, involving supposedly those voices, or the things behind those sounds.
And it's pretty good.
Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigor Mortis. I'm Review Cultist.
And I am apparently somebody who does not give his guests enough information. Hey, this is Adam from Roll Point Exchange, returning once again to this familiar imaginary couch.
Yes. It's a very comfy couch for being imaginary.
Yeah.
Made of styrofoam and dreams. But yeah, and we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have It Sounds Like a Baby Crying. So, It Sounds Like a Baby Crying is by Brandon Faircloth on creepypastastories.com, a new website for our show to be covering. And yeah, in the last few months, I have been kind of going down a rabbit hole of TikTok videos, like short films, Twitter feeds of, because apparently it's trending right now, or like there's a renewed interest in the folklore of Appalachia, and these things that mock your voice, or like they mock animal calls when it clearly not an animal. And if you hear them, or if they, even worse, if you hear your own name being called out, you need to get the fuck off the trails and back home because something is stalking you now. And again, like I think basically since like Old Gods of since you Adam introduced me to like Old Gods of Appalachia, since Fallout 76, I've kind of garnered this interest in Appalachia and its folklore. Probably since we started talking and hanging out, honestly. Since you are kind of you are quite the avid person or the avid Appalachian connoisseur yourself. So,
thank you, sir.
Being from the foothills of.
Yeah, I try to be the advocate whenever I can. It just always has felt like just the people, at least in the southern region of Appalachia and whatnot, we never have received the greatest treatment by media and all. I mean, I'm looking at you, Deliverance, or The Hills Have Eyes, or not the Hills Have, wrong turn, excuse me.
Oh, yeah, wrong turn. Yeah, no, yeah, I was gonna say The Hills Have Eyes is out west.
Yeah,
but again, similar kind of like unfortunate stereotypes of like hillbillies and rednecks. Like again, it's a whole genre of horror movies that is a little not as not as sensitive to various people with class backgrounds, with certain class backgrounds. So, and again, like we have similar kind of stereotypes up here with more bush, like kind of northern people and stuff like that in Ontario, even, or like up in our provinces. So
yeah,
it's a thing.
Human nature to kind of have to make an other out of somebody.
Yeah, or like I guess I was gonna say poke fun, or I was gonna like mix like poke fun and like talk down, like poke down to to people who are in a different economic situation as the rest of us. So
yeah,
yeah,
I've enjoyed your interest in this, and I enjoyed having an opportunity last year to give you a little taste of Appalachia. Apparently, I didn't tell you everything as a preface here, but it's really cool. And like I like seeing works like this, and it doesn't. The story, before we get into it, it's not like it is demonizing any like one group or person or people or anything like that. This is just a nice little I'm all by myself and it's creepy kind of thing.
Yeah, it's focusing more on the actual like the folkloric aspect or the supernatural aspect. Of that's what's on the trails. And it's also like, because I have heard of the Appalachian Trail prior to even like reading creepypastas and stuff like that, and it was like I didn't realize how extensive it was. I also didn't realize how extensive the mountain range was, or how old it is, because again, that's something I recently learned is like the Appalachian Mountains have been situated on the earth since Pangea. Like where they are geologically or like geographically, they have not changed since the supercontinent on Earth, which is just like floors me.
It's like pretty cool. This spans. So what is it? Scotland or Ireland? Which way?
It goes. So it spans out to like I know there's the mountains actually go under the Atlantic to like New York, to like Newfoundland, of course, because of course it does. And what did because I found it a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, didn't I? Like I brought that up.
Yeah, I swear I think it was Ireland or Scotland. I can't remember. I think Ireland's what I'm leaning toward, but don't worry. We had
it was
technology.
You can find it online. It's there's a pretty interesting, like if you look at like the geography of like how the world has changed, and like you see like where bits of the Appalachian Mountains have kind of like gone off and followed like the continents, and then you see like where the bulk of it is, and it's like it hasn't moved. It truly is like a great old one. But yeah, and like there's such a wealth of like folklore, like spooky folklore in the Appalachian Mountains. And I think that's it's probably to the. I think a part of this trend, or part of why this is like catching on again, is probably because of like certain media things, like Fallout 76 and
Yeah.
And other products that are diving into that kind of lore.
There's also a big renewed interest in or musicians that are kind of coming from the region. I don't know if you're well versed with this artist, but one of them who the cool thing is I'm friends with his friends. I just have never met him, and all that is Tyler Childers. He's a local boy who's done well and has had some commercial success doing country music.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, yeah, because it's like usually like country and like bluegrass, correct? Or
yeah, bluegrass. Yeah, that's Kentucky's big staple there.
Yeah. My dad's a big fan of bluegrass. But getting back to the story, we had a creepypasta. Oh man, the tangibles are going across borders soon. Yeah, so it sounds like a baby crying. I look basically. It was really just a search, like a Google search of Appalachian creepypastas, and I stumbled upon this one in one of the links. And this website creepypastastories.com, which has like a plethora of other creepypastas on it. So before we get too far into anything, I know we're already like pretty far in. Let's do the initial like recommendations. This is kind of our new format, Adam.
Okay.
since you were here, we do like an initial recommend, like what we initially recommended the story, and then like at the end we kind of cement like, yeah, do we still recommend or do we still not recommend? Like, has the conversation changed us?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna recommend this one. So
I have no faults in recommending it. I enjoyed it, and we'll see where we end up on the end of it after we all point out flaws and thoughts and stuff like that. But I think regardless, it's a good. I think in a Word document, I copy paste, so I make notes. It's like maybe 9 pages story. It's kind of lengthy for a creepypasta, but it's worth the time invested.
9 pages is lengthy. you sir clearly haven't read Sonic.exe the remake at 56 pages.
No, I have not, sir.
Sorry, I'm still trying to recover from that a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, so with that out of the way, let's go into the rundown for It Sounds Like a Baby Crying. Okay. So Carson, our narrator, went on his first trip on the Appalachian Trail a month ago. He used to do a bit of hiking growing up with his dad, but this was the first time going on such a lengthy trek. He's researched it, he's prepped it, and was only going to do a portion of the trail, 500 miles, as opposed to the full 2,200 miles. I did not check to see what that is in kilometers, so I'm sorry, my Commonwealth brethren. Let me actually just quickly double check that. 2 kilometers.
I thought it'd be like it's 3, so it'd be like 800 kilometers, maybe. I'm guessing.
You actually that was a pretty good guess. It clocks in 500 miles is 804 kilometers, give or take. And then Jesus, 2,200 miles is 3,540 kilometers, give or take.
Yeah. And damn. I've been near it. And it's like I can even send you a picture if you want to make it the Apple Mart and stuff like that. It's very extensive. And I think our narrator Carson, who doesn't introduce himself to page 5.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and it's not even him. We get it from the other character in the story. We don't even have an introduction from like Carson saying I'm Carson. It's just apparently like that happened in the interim.
Yeah, that was one of the 2 glowing flaws from the first paragraph. But I'm assuming he's starting from like North Carolina, and he's supposed to be basically walking his way up to a point in Virginia.
Well, it says that he started in Springer, Georgia, or the Springer Mountains in Georgia.
Oh, Springer Mountain, Georgia. Okay, so
and then
they're next to each other.
Yeah, and then he was going to try and reach the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia within 2 months.
So, and his math sucks. I want to just go ahead and point that out.
Yeah.
I sat and figured it out. Like, so he's, by the way, let me kind of backtrack a bit. So he's wanting to do this. Him and his dad hiked a lot. What
Yeah.
you learn later on in the story is that he was doing this in memoriam to his father, who apparently passed away. But that's just not mentioned in the very beginning.
Yeah, that's mentioned at the very end of the story. And I was like, wait. I went back up to the top. I was like, did he actually say that this was because his dad died or something? It's like, no, it's just random. Like, by the way, I was doing this whole thing because my dad, like to remember my dad. It's like, you didn't say that.
You didn't remember your dad when you were telling us about this. So that does suck. Now he starts out. He says, like, so by January, he's been prepping, trying to build up his stamina. He has everything in place. He has permits and gear and et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And he mentions that he needs to be done by May because he's starting a new job.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Now,
I don't think he started in January. I think he started prepping in January.
Yeah, I'm assuming he left in March.
Yeah.
Or, close. But now, Georgia is more, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. Like, we don't have the snow, obviously, that you get as you sit there and scoff at me from the great white north. But, like, you're still taking off at the tail end of winter, or at least right before spring and all that. So and you're starting out south and you're going north. So, I mean, you're starting out in better weather. And, ideally, if you make it up a month, like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea just to kind of, you're going to the worst area as it's getting better. Yeah. But he does say that he's wanting to do it 500 miles. He's wanting to go 500 miles and he wants to get there by May.
Yeah.
I think my first big hang up here as he's going through this, he goes, but my work wasn't, but it wasn't just my work schedule that had fallen into place. Everything seemed like it was working out for me to do the hike, almost like the universe was pushing me toward it. Apparently his dad died and pushed him toward it, et cetera, et cetera. So one day in early March, here we go, found it. I put my pack on, locked the car, and headed out. So that's the first part that I actually get a little kind of persnickety in my comments. I mean, I write in my notes here. So you just left your car in a parking lot for 2 months.
Yeah.
Get someone to drop you off, dumbass.
Yeah, this isn't the Blair Witch Project where like they just like, I'm just gonna park my car off to the side in the woods and just go off into the woods.
It's not going to be there when you get back. Yeah. If someone doesn't steal it, it will be impounded.
Yeah, exactly. Like, God.
Now, you get a little bit of an unreliable narrator, or like, I don't think like he's imagining things, and this would be the last thing I speak about before I relinquish the floor here. He talks about the first day. Said it was cool. No shit. The scenery, beautiful. He was excited to get away, but he only made 8 miles that first day. Now, granted, it's not like 8 miles like a track, like a level ground. So, 8 miles, the average, I looked this up because this is how I am, is the average speed per hour for hiking is between 2 and 2.5 miles, which would be 2 miles would be like 3.2 kilometers for you heathens. And, so he basically walked for 4 hours, maybe, and something like that. So doing the math, if he was going, 8 miles a day, he is not going to hit his May time. Like, in fact, by my figures that I don't remember the exact number, it's in the low 400 miles. If he walked 8 miles a day, it would. Yeah, it's not. He's not going to make it.
He'd almost make it. Apparently, because if he's going a steady 8 miles a day, and like it's 2 months, so like give or take 30 days in a month. So like 60, he'd make about 480 miles.
Yeah,
which I mean, he's coming up 20 miles short.
Mm-hmm.
He might be a little late for his new job.
Yeah, he's having a little bit of problems there.
Yeah, I think he was expecting to be able to like, get a few more miles each day, I think is what he was hoping for. But
personally, I'd leave a little wiggle room for in case something happens. But yeah, so I mean, it's good. It's just that's just kind of stuck out to me.
Fair, yeah. Things take a turn about 2 weeks later during his trek when the rains come. So he starts trying to seek shelter because it's getting miserable, and he finds one of those buildings that people put out there for like I guess like the National Woods or like the national park infrastructure puts out there, like sort of almost like a it's like three of the walls are wood. There's a roof, and then there's like a tarp on the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And at first he's very cautious because he doesn't want to deal with staying in the same location as like other strangers. But fortunately for him, he opens up the tarp and finds that there's nobody else in this shelter. That changes after he's resting and drying off, and he's woken up by a man named Tony who comes in and, while friendly and polite, seems to be a bit off to Carson. Like he's sketchy about something.
Yeah.
But he's clearly a well-traveled guy. And that night, Tony asks if Carson has heard any strange sounds on his trek, specifically a baby crying. And that's when we get a story from Tony as he reveals that 2 days ago, he heard a human baby crying in the woods, not merely an animal call that sounded like a baby, which, as he says, he's a pretty seasoned outdoorsman. Like, he kind of gives us a little bit of backstory for him. And in fact, this is like his third trip, his third trip, and actually his first trip going south. And he's just come down from Maine, so like the other, like the far north end of the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
And so being being this kind of like knowledgeable about the woods and like what animal calls are and stuff like that, he feels pretty. He decides to go investigate this baby crying, thinking it might be somebody's kid that's either like been left out there in the woods or lost. And that's when he finds the sound leads him to a patch of seemingly dead trees and bitter winds, and some kind of strange child-sized humanoid figure with glowing yellow eyes and a dark void for a head. That was the source of the baby crying. And Tony manages to escape this creature, but the next night, the creature catches up to him and marks him by licking the back of his knee. Now, Tony is here in the shelter with Carson and is scared to like leave and fears that he's being hunted by this thing, and begs Carson to let him stay in the shelter for at least until first light, which Carson kind of honestly, like, reasonably hesitantly agrees. Like, not the best first impression of a person when you get told that kind of a story. The next morning, Carson wakes up. He wasn't planning on staying on falling asleep, but sleep just took him over the night. And Tony is gone, but his stuff is all there. And it looks like he walked outside and then was grabbed and dragged into the woods. Carson immediately calls for help with his phone and decides against continuing his trip. Now he's in his new apartment, in the seemingly safe, or in the seemingly safety of human society. But Carson is caught unawares the night before, him like writing all this down, by something under his bed that grabs him and licks the back of his knee before it flees through his apartment window. The creepiest part. Oh, sorry.
I was say I don't mean to be too graphic and all that, but it wouldn't want to lick the back of my legs if it jerked me down as I got out of bed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's oh man. we all have like that kind of fear, right? Like as a kid,
Yeah.
or like where like going like when you put your feet down, you just like we've all seen those movies where like somebody's under the bed and just grabs you.
Yeah, Pet Cemetery. Yeah, I've seen that. I like
Yeah,
my
I
Achilles
was
shin.
I was thinking, honestly, the one that always got me as a kid was Idle Hands, and
Hmm.
the parents or the mother in that one, where like she tries to like run for the like she's like the first kill, or the
Yeah,
initial kill of the movie. She tries to like run off her bed, and the thing grabs her and just drags her underneath the bed before like you get like a blood spray.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, the creepiest part of all this, if it could get creepier, is the creature seems to have come through the front door as if Carson unlocked the door and opened it for it, letting it in.
yeah.
So he's recounting this story, fearing that the creature is going to return and that he's going to end up like Tony did. And that's where the story ends.
Yeah.
We
So
should have left off of that. So yeah.
it's his implication that Tony probably got up for some reason, like probably in a dead sleep and walked away that morning or sometime during the night, and the thing got him, and then it repeats the process here. But I
Yeah.
don't understand why it's marking him if it followed him to his damn house.
Well, I think that's true. Actually, I was just thinking, I thought it was like, oh, because like it's marking him. It's some kind of like preternatural ability, but it's like, wait, yeah, how did it follow him? Why did it need to lick him? If maybe it's just like it's a taste. I don't know. Like maybe it likes to get a taste before it goes in for the kill.
I think it would have been better done if when he woke up that morning, his pants were
Oh,
shredded.
and he had like a weird like feeling on the back of his on the back of his knee.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like a rash or something like that that just wouldn't go away after the trip. And they say it's eczema or some shit like that. And
yeah. Or like because I think in the story, Tony says that like there's nothing there, but he can feel it, like like almost like a like dirt that won't wash away. It's like yeah, well, it's almost like just having like a patch of like nerve damage underneath
yeah,
your or like a fuzzy feeling, like almost like your somehow the back of your knee is falling asleep kind of thing.
hmm
Um, but yeah, that is it sounds like a baby crying. And I'm just gonna hop into here. I'm sorry, Adam. We're doing a mini version of this section of our show.
okay.
Um, everyone tolerates the grammar inquisitions at this point. So yeah, I've got two that I kind of latched onto while I was reading the story.
Okay, you go first.
Okay. Told myself I was to up the challenge. So when I first read that, I was like, okay, that's clearly like should be like I was up to the challenge. But then I'd like keep reading it, and it's like, no, I think actually it works as it is. This might be a nitpick. I'm just like told myself I was up to the challenge, or told myself I was to up the challenge.
I I don't think you're nitpicking. It's the point gets across, but it's not clear. And if you're running into that kind of problem, it feels like an omission of a pronoun, or or something like that.
Yeah, it just seemed like it just seems like the way it's written isn't like it doesn't. I don't know if this is a correct way. It doesn't flow well, like as you're reading it. Like it like seems like there's something wrong with it, and then like even when you go back and you read, it's like no, that actually kind of like that. You have to like make excuses, I guess,
Yeah.
to make it work. But yeah,
And he
because he's like,
uses I perfectly throughout the course of it. I got to my tent. I passed. I figured, why couldn't you say I was up to the challenge or something like that?
yeah, like I was to up the challenge. I told myself I was to up the challenge. Like, um, yeah, I feel like it should have been I was up to the challenge rather than I was, because like to up the challenge was like I'm going to increase the challenge. Like
Yeah.
that's where I was thinking like, oh, maybe it does make sense.
Yeah.
But I think to me like it should be the two and the up should switch spots basically.
Well, him
Um,
eating two things of ramen in his first night there was up in the challenge. He's
yeah.
gonna run out of food. Like, slow
Oh my
down,
god.
fucker.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like he had like the planning was pretty was interesting because like his mom's like mailing him care packages,
Yeah.
basically, like every at post offices along the way, and he figures he'll be able to get to them within a week of them arriving. So, which for I don't know if the post office is the same as us, but I mean that makes sense to us because like usually there's like a 7-day or so holding period at post offices. So
Yeah.
But the other grammar inquisition thing I have here is more of like so the quote I used is like okay, Tony, well, it seems like you've got more to say, so tell me what happened. And then it immediately goes into the I've been hiking for over 30 years,
Yeah.
but there's no quotations
There's
to
no
signify.
quotations. That's the same thing I marked.
Yeah, like, and it's weird because I feel like there should either be quotations or there should be like some kind of dividing space or like a horizontal line to like tell us as a reader that this is going into a story that now Tony is telling us. Because even at the end of Tony's story, it skips a line to like give us a break before it jumps into the present day.
Yeah, there's no transition. It's just
Yeah.
a jarring shift.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Yeah.
if this was a book, then it would if you immediately went to chapter 2, then and it began with that, then it's easy. It's just a moment when it's just
it'd be a chapter break. Like
if this car was a vehicle, this is where you're grinding gears between first and second gear, just forcing that thing along.
Yeah. All right. I'm glad. So that's the. It's a simple like fix. You just got to add like a space there, but yeah.
And it makes it worse. Is like this is well written throughout the course of everything else. It's
it
just
is. Yeah.
it's overlooked. I mean, it's knowledgeable. I didn't know. I knew the owls and bobcats can sometimes be mistook for babies or women. No, I didn't know about porcupines. I mean, I've been out in the woods and heard bobcats.
I've watched enough creepy forest stuff thanks to the 411 and other like again. I think the 411 is really what got me into like the forest be scary-o. Like that attraction to that fear I have of the woods. But like like I know about bobcats. Like they sound like screaming women. I wasn't entirely sure about owls, but it makes sense. And the porcupines really got me. That one was a new one on me. But like, yeah, the story is very well. It seems like it's very well researched. Like the characters aren't from Derpland. They're preparing. It's like we did a story a while back about a guy just going on a hike out in like the Norwegian forests. With like barely any kind of prep. He just like went out into the woods, into the snow and stuff like that. It's like, you're gonna die. But like this character like is intelligent. He knows he's prepped himself. Like it made sense. And then it's the supernatural element that killed or that is the hazard, not his own stupidity. So the story seems really well written, and it's like like I said, like I only have 2 grammar inquisitions that I like really care that like I latched onto. So it's well written in that regard as well. But it's just these little things.
Pocket knife's one word. He made it 2.
Is it?
That was it. I noticed that.
Pocket is now you got me. It's one word in the story.
It's supposed all right. It says reaching down to my pocket. I patted the pocket knife. According to Microsoft, pocket knife is one word.
Okay.
So I'll even copy paste all these things out so I can make notes in the margin, and it'll pick up things like, I mean, that was one of the glaring underline marks. Verb tense. I noticed, like, 2 things. No great athlete outdoor. This is like second paragraph. I found repeated most were travel light and plan ahead. And I mean, you could debatably say like we're traveling light and planning ahead, or something like that. At least he was consistent he didn't shift all the time. It just
Yeah.
there's just a couple conventions that people could like nitpick if they were really worried about it. You know, he got crawling should have been like it wasn't long before I was crawling into my bag and falling asleep. Should have been crawled. Like just like I said, minor like, run it through spell check and all that. And obviously it has, but
Yeah, this has clearly been like this is not the first like round of editing. Like this isn't the first draft. This isn't even probably like the second round of editing. This clearly has been edited.
yeah.
But yeah. Did you have anything else for Grammar Inquisition?
No, I mean, this is the most flawless work you've sent my way yet.
Well, we've raised the bar, unfortunately now. But yeah, I suppose we'll move on to actual thoughts then, like our the actual like kind of notes we took while we're reading the story.
Okay. I jumped ahead, so you.
It's fine. It's we also sometimes do that on the show, so it's no big. I'm gonna start with this quote here, though. There was no sign of a person or their stuff, or even wet spots like someone had recently left to go back into the rain. I looked at the tarp closer. It didn't look sun-bleached or worn, and I didn't know why someone would leave it behind if it had been put up by a passing hiker. But either way, I was grateful for the shelter and the solitude. And then Carson was eaten by a garden. Honestly, like I just this little part just like prompted this idea is like I really love to see a game or a story set in the modern day dealing with a modern day variant of a gardenelle, which is this I don't know if it's specifically Appalachian, but it's a fearsome critter or like it's a North American folklore monster that mimics itself as a cabin, usually covered in vines and foliage, and it can devour its prey, people, as they go through its door and or slash mouth, unassuming, and then like locks them in and starts digesting them. And I just think that would be like really fun to like some campers are going missing in the woods, and like no one suspects the little remote hiking shelters that is actually like one of these like mimics, basically.
Yeah. It does seem really fortuitous that he comes across that. My complaint prior to that was they should have explained a little bit more. It becomes clear pretty soon, but there's even when it's starting to come down, he realizes that his feet are getting wet, and that's where you're going to, Lord Trenchfoot, kind of like bad things are going to happen. So he definitely needs to dry his shoes out and just, not soldier on. And he's looking for a way out. And he goes, still, I didn't want to push my feet too far without drying them out. So I started looking for blue blazes, which that threw me off.
I guessed what they were, but I was like, I hope it does explain what those are. And it does kind of eventually tell you, like they're basically like trail markers.
Yeah, I think markers would have been better than just using the vernacular of somebody familiar with that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that was yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I think like a little bit of explanation for like certain things would have like can go a long way when it comes to some certain stories, like for context.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I have here is the only thing scary about nature is not understanding it. There's never been something I experienced that I couldn't figure out a reasonable explanation for. And the tall tales are just that. Bullshit used to scare kids or pass a slow night. I've even heard things that sound like babies before. Bobcats and some barn owls do. So do porcupines, if you believe it. But if you know what to listen for, if you know what to listen for, you can tell the difference. That difference is what I was listening for when I heard the crying start 2 nights ago. Okay, so I was reading the story, I was like, is this just gonna end up like before it even got like me to like a bobcat thing and they're talking about the baby crying, I was like, let's sort of like what we brought up earlier. It's like, is this just gonna be a story about a bobcat stalking a character?
Mm-hmm.
Because like again, I knew that like bit of trivia. And I'm happy that the story itself does try to bring these rationales to the table, only to flip that table and reveal something more blatantly supernatural is the cause.
Yeah.
Because like you always want like you want to see that in a story, like what you want to see the characters be like, try and like rationalize, try and be intelligent before their entire view of reality is shifted when confronted with something unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
And then the biggest, probably quite possibly, like aside from the baby crying, this is probably one of the biggest like red flags and like nope moments for me. If I was in the woods and if I was in this guy's shoes, the child was still crying, and I could tell I was getting closer until I was there. It was a field of bare winter trees that should have had leaves by now, but somehow didn't. Yeah, that is, for me, that is a real big red flag. If I like if I'm like following a baby crying and I stumble into a glen of just like barren trees, I'm just like, nope, that's a trap. I've seen far too many horror movies and read far too many horror stories. This is the blasted heath, and I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything to comment on that or no?
Well, a couple things.
Okay.
First off, I have mentioned the fact that about preparing yourself when you go outside in the woods and stuff like that. And guys, like there's bears, there's snakes, there's all kinds of shit. And so like, but he's got this pocket knife, which I'm assuming it's one of these like folding kind of blades, which, as you know, I have in my pocket right now, and I always have in my pocket. That's just I always carry a pocket knife and a lighter. But
never know when a random Swede's gonna show up.
Yeah, I gotta keep getting those free books from Free League, man. That's how you do it. But he mentions it several times, like reaching, like as he was approaching the clearing, where the little shelter that was erected, which to me it just seems like it was there. Like we're further away from the dead area. It just coincidentally was there. Like part of me wants to think it was chumming people in and stuff like that. It's just somebody had left their stuff up and had left. But he goes,
I kind of regarding
please
like
continue.
I kind of assumed that the shelter was the way he describes it. It doesn't say like. I think maybe if it described it as like being like a lean-to kind of like shelter, or like something more makeshift. Because in my head it wasn't so much a makeshift thing as it was something that was constructed by like rangers.
The tarp was the only thing that was additional.
Yeah. Because otherwise it just seemed like, again, like one of those like roofed or like like partially enclosed like gazebo or not gazebo, but like an enclosed, like a roofed shelter, right?
Yeah. Something small to give you a break. And they do have those kind of things along those longer trails and even like little cabined areas. But he patted the pocket knife there. So I didn't know how much use it would really be if some maniac hyper decided to jump at me. So the familiar shape comforted me. And I forced a smile as I pushed back the tarp and found no one. It's like, Jesus, like for starters, like the pocket knife pops up again.
Mm-hmm.
Like whenever he's talking to
Tony. Yeah.
Tony, he when he gets woken up, I think there's another reference of him having a pocket knife. But that was, like I said, at this like
like there's stranger danger and then there's paranoia. And I feel like he's like, for a guy who's like, it's like, what, like, did you really think that you were going to be alone on the Appalachian Trail? Like it's a public trail, I assume. That hundreds upon thousands of Americans go on, probably not even non-Americans go like hike up every year. Like you're not going to be the only one hiking that trail.
It seems like projection. So here's the actual section.
Yeah.
Where he meets Tony. Goes, I promise I'm a nice guy. His smile faltered. I just don't want to be out in the dark. Is all. Swallowing, I gave him a nod.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Come on in. There's plenty of room, and there was. We could easily fit or 10 people in the space if we sat close. And it was, and as it was, he was able to settle far enough away that we still had to raise our voices to be heard over the pounding rain. And then it goes on about Tony. He breaks out like a little camp stove, which is additional weight that, he acknowledges that, it's probably not good for the trip, but he just likes the creature comforts of it. It was strange. He was friendly and seemed fairly easygoing on the surface, but there was also a skittish tension to him that he couldn't quite hide. And I put in here, project much narrator, because I wonder how fucking crazy he looked in there, Tony.
Like chewing on that dry ramen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like some kind of godless heathen.
I did have this in my notes and I took it out because it was like, it's like, maybe that's not as bad. It was like, no, okay, I'm glad you brought it up, because like when I first read it, I was like, man, this, like, Carson or Nair at the time, because we didn't know that his name was Carson. Like, Nair's a little just a wee bit paranoid and like antisocial.
Yeah. That's coming from the guy who's sitting there telling you, like, when he goes out in the woods, he usually has a gun or something. Of course, I mentioned snakes. That's the main thing I carry it for. Not that I go out hunting for snakes, but I have a 38 that has snake shot in it, which is kind of like, like a shotgun, essentially like a spray, because you never know when you're going to be walking and you're right on top of them, as you could tell when we were driving around.
Yeah, the 20 minutes into me arriving, we go and get some of that Ale 8, and on the drive over to the convenience store, we come across a fucking rattlesnake.
Yeah. I swerved to miss it. The man who
did not.
No, he did not. And then we stopped on the way home and saw it rattle on his tail. Like, yeah, good. Oh, here's something else. Grammar Inquisition I put in my notes.
Okay.
So after he finds Tony, and he like kind of munching on stuff, he goes, rooting around in my pack, I found a bar to eat. Of soap? What the fuck is a bar?
I mean, bar? I can assume. I know what assuming means. It makes an ass of you and me, but but like I can assume that it was probably like a granola bar or like a maybe even a chocolate bar. If the guy, like, I assume the character is like competent enough to bring granola bars.
Yeah. That was just, a little omission. It could have been that. It could have been a chunk of dry ramen for all we know. But it was just, you just need a little bit more description, because when I hear bar, I think bar of soap first, and then I kind of went through like, okay, it could be like, a granola bar or something like that. But overall, that was cool. Certain things just don't seem to add up to me. Now, I'm not necessarily worried about the dead trees that you mentioned beforehand, because you're not aware of this. But 14 states along the Appalachian Trail, there's a problem called the emerald ash borer, which basically is a bug that has killed all of a lot of the ash trees. So my family is, honestly, as we speak right now, they are driving down to the Smoky Mountains. They have left me here at the house, I would like to note. They have left me here so that they could take their grandmother and they can have a girls' day out, which is totally fine. But if you go down to even, in the Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Smoky Mountain region and stuff like that, and you get on high elevation, and I probably have shown you pictures that you can see the dead trees. Like, there are dead trees where these ashes were killed by bugs. And it's just, we don't have them anymore. We just have dead trees standing in their spot. Now, a whole clearing of them, I guess it could happen, but it definitely is ominous. But it wasn't and I knew what the author was intending to do with that, but I could easily dismiss it as well,
Yeah. Yeah. They're trying to invoke like some kind of like, there's some kind of sallow ground, or like this is unholy ground kind of thing, or something is not right about this part of this patch of land. It's like if you're to we used to have some really gnarly, thick black trees in the woods that reminded us of Hexus from Fern Gully. Like legitimately, we'd walk out into the woods behind our development back when those trails were still around before the development grew a bit, and like we knew there were little like glens or little like grottos that have like that giant gnarled black tree in the center, and just like, oh yeah, that tree is evil. That tree is definitely like got something buried under it. Like that's definitely defending, like keeping something at bay.
But then why was it there? And you would think it would be its hunting ground, and then it follows him back to Georgia or wherever he took off from, stuff like that too.
That also kind of, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's it.
Well, I mean, that also kind of stems again from what I've heard of like what the things on the Appalachian Trail do when they start stalking you. Like they do follow you home. Especially if you find out if they know what your name is, then like they can like latch onto you.
Oh, you mean Carson?
Yeah. So, and actually, Tony kind of like, I wonder, like, it made me wonder actually, if like, did Tony just fucking doom Carson by like saying his name aloud?
And how did it learn Tony's name? Did he go here, baby? He's like Tony, and just kind of keeps walking.
Oh man, yeah, like that. Or it's just like, what if like maybe like if we'd had a line maybe during Tony's story, it's like where he like said I said aloud, like as I got to the patch of dead trees, like, Tony, what have you gotten yourself into? Like even that would have like made like, oh shit, he said his name in the woods near one of these things.
Yeah,
it would at the very least it would have like helped like kind of maybe connect this to like that set of folklore.
Yeah. Well, kudos to the creature description. That was awesome.
Actually, that's a good segue to what I have next. Which is the creature's description. It in some ways it looked like a child, not a baby, but a child of maybe 12 or so in size and length of limb. But its skin was scaly and rough, like that of a desert lizard or the bark of a tree. And as it crawled down to the bottom, I saw that skin shift as though it was mimicking whatever was close by. Its fingers and toes were long and spindly, ending with flat pads, with hooked claws twisted out of them like a punishment. And its head was just darkness and those damn yellow eyes. You need to understand what I'm saying. Not that I couldn't see its head well. I could see it just fine as it began to crawl toward me. I'm telling you, it had no damn head at all. Just glowing eyes and that yawning darkness that would let out the terrible wail that had drawn me in. Even terrified, watching it dig up the earth as it came closer, I found it hard to resist that cry. I don't know that I could have at all if I hadn't gotten so caught up in staring into that wailing black hole it called a face. Because I could see something in there after all. Teeth. So many goddamn teeth. I just fucking love this description.
Yeah.
It's so unearthly yet earthy. Like there's aspects of it that are wholly alien and like cosmic horror-esque, like the head obviously and such. But yet it seems like it's well adapted to hunting in the forest and luring prey. Like with that same description, it's able to mimic itself in this environment. It is this like tiny, tiny spindly creature. And then there's just this like black hole and with yellow eyes and too many teeth in like deeper in the maw of oblivion, basically. And it gets even creepier with because like later on in the story, I think like the next encounter he has with it is this vibrant purple tongue coming out of the void visage,
Yeah.
to lick the back of his knee, and it's just such a cool idea of like having this like cloud of darkness, or like just this black hole or void in place of where the head should be, but then also have like anatomical parts as well there, like the yellow eyes, and like I looked on into the cloud of darkness and saw teeth, so many goddamn teeth. It's just such a good line. And I mean, maybe it's because I'm also attracted to that kind of descriptor for a monster, because I've used that monster, or like that similar description for a monster in a game I ran for RPX, and also our sister podcast, One Less Die, the Ontario mocking spider, and the transformed humans that they turn into their like brood queens. They have that kind of like they're like spider like bodies and stuff like that, but then their heads are just these orbs, these clouds of shadow, and like the only thing that you can see through the darkness is just these like glowing spider eyes. So again, it's just it's a good alien descriptor for a creature. So
I really loved when he, so as we mentioned, it hiding under the bed, and it's almost like a moment from Predator or something like that when they notice the red marker on them, and it's like, huh? And then they get shot by the Predator's weapon and all that. Like he sticks his feet down under the bed, looks down, sees that yellow glow, and then
why can I see my feet so well? Yeah. Yeah, like when it said that, it's like I was wondering why I could see my feet and ankles so well. It's like why they were so well lit, and then it's like what was that yellow glow coming from? And then it's like, oh shit, it's under his bed.
That was well done, and so many well done things, and
yeah,
the void of a face and all that. I like the strangeness of it. It wasn't. I don't know. It was great. I'm just gushing over that. I think that whenever I create a creature, taking that kind of approach or elaborating on it would be a definitely good idea. So, breathe some new life. If it had been like a little rat-faced, the hell monkeys or whatever they call them on the Appalachian Trail, that cryptid creature.
Oh yeah, the howl or the
howlers are real, but it's devil monkeys.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with the devil monkeys.
You sent me the link.
Have I?
Yes.
Wait.
Or I sent you the link. I apologize. Back on April 21st, sir.
Oh shit, devil monkeys in West Virginia, or in Virginia. Okay, my bad.
Yeah. But I mean, at least it's steeped in something that you could,
like, that could easily be some kind of like escaped monkey from like the past that's like now bred and like become like an invasive species kind of thing.
Yeah, it could be a bunch of Congo. Like
exactly. Yeah. And but like this, like the black hole for a face is just like that's so like it's otherworldly.
Yeah.
Also, it kind of for some reason like it makes me want to like harken to like we've talked about like the coal mining like kind of culture of Appalachia, and it's like it kind of almost like brought to mind like because I mean we've also watched Ghibli films. So it's like the soot demons or the little soot spirits. It's like, what if that's just like it's like its face is actually not shadow, it's just like this like coal soot, like a cloud of coal soot. It's that it uses for a face. That's kind of like again like deepening its root in Appalachia.
Yeah.
No, and then I'm just kind of now we have a creature for whenever we get the Old Gods of Appalachia tabletop game.
The dust. I was thinking of it, treating it like a swarm. You know what I mean? Like so the dust.
Yeah.
It descends. That would be cool. But yeah, it's excellent job on the creature. I don't know if I can elaborate on it any more other than. I mean, I think the story could have went a couple of different ways and still been just as good. The way the man disappeared was great. I think it would have been. I would have preferred it a little bit better if maybe he was betrayed by Tony to a degree, and when he left, like Tony was trying to kite him in to kind of take himself off the list and diverge the creature's attention.
I don't know. I kind of like that Tony wasn't a bad guy. He was just like because it makes the story a little bit more tragic, but like you kind of want that in a horror story. I also like the idea, like I this could either be that like he sleptwalked out there, like he was in a trance because the creature had that ability. Maybe that's why it licks you, is to because it is able to assert some kind of control over you. But then that doesn't explain why supposedly Carson was able to like Carson supposedly opened the door while he was sleepwalking later on in the story. But it's either that, like either he was under some kind of influence like while sleeping, or Tony just went out, like figured he might be safe to go out there and take a piss, and then like as he's pissing off the tree line, he gets grabbed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting. It's a cool, like, again, it's a good little like scene of like how the creature is like stalking him and then how it gets him.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I have here, actually, I really liked this bit of subtle foreshadowing. So we get like part of the story. We get like right before Tony starts into his story. It's like rubbing the back of his knees. He smiled slightly and nodded, and then like goes on into the story and stuff like that of what happened. And then we get this bit in the story. To be honest, I was more concerned with what it was doing. It was licking me. It was licking me just behind the knee. And I was like, oh, that's such a good subtle foreshadowing or revelation for what we heard earlier. Like what he was doing earlier, he was rubbing the back of his knees. It's like, why was he doing that? Like you assumed, like at the time, I was like, oh, maybe he's just rubbing the back of his knees because he's been walking a long time. Like that's maybe that's like what he was doing. But then like when it reveals that like the reason he was doing that was because this thing's marked him, or it's like it licked him in that part. I was like, oh shit. Like that's a nice subtle bit of foreshadowing. Like there's clear intent in the writing. Yeah. And then
maybe licking you makes you seek out other people and it brings it other targets.
Much like similar to like how he's tried you, like he knows he's like he should try his phone, but he hasn't in 2 days. Like he hasn't been able to like mentally pick up his phone and call somebody.
Yeah, it's obviously like, affecting you.
Yeah, it's clearly he's under the influence of this creature. Yeah, no, that's because like that was another thing. Is like, yeah, and then like even similar for Carson, like now that Carson's like been marked, or like this creature clearly, like when you're in proximity to it, it can assert some kind of dominance over you for a period of time.
If you want to make it go ahead.
I was in Call of Cthulhu or Call of Cthulhu D20. I'd have the creature have dominance, have the spell dominance, because like it makes you want to do things that may not be like, as long as they're not like life threatening or like not like suicidal kind of things. But like, yeah, just walk out into near the woods, buddy, and just like, and gotcha.
In the beginning, author, if you're listening to me, if you want to make it a little bit creepier and darker. In the beginning, mention that you're involved in Boy Scouts.
Oh, fuck.
And then at the end of it, after all that encounters, go, well, I got to get ready I'm taking a bunch of scouts out on a camping trip.
Oh, God. Jesus. Yeah, that would be so creepy. Just like the Boy Scouts or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like because it's got to have a mechanical benefit. I mean, the drug in it, it could have killed both of them at any moment. So that's the only way that I can like rationalize including something like that in is if you can use it for what's the benefit of letting it go? You know what I mean? Other than like the thrill of the hunt, so to speak.
Yeah, maybe it's just bored, but like that's not as interesting as having it have this like devious plot of like, well, this guy is like a camp counselor most of the time, or like a scout leader most of the time, or like for his day job. Like I psychically know that, or I supernaturally know that because I've like traced I probed his mind a bit. So, yeah, no, that's perfect. I love that. That would definitely make the story better. And the next thing I had was about the dad thing, but we talked about that earlier, which just it made no sense. It's like, wait, like. That's why you were on the Appalachian Trail, like. All right,
yeah,
like because it just says like early, like because I went back and it always like he went on day hikes with his dad, but at no point did he say specifically like he was doing this for him until the very end. Like you need to have that at the beginning of the story. Like if you're gonna, or at the very least, like maybe like even say like that's why you were doing it as a cover, but like it makes more sense if there was like if that was brought up at the beginning of the story as well, so that we had that like reason, right?
Yeah, definitely an omission that is, it hurt it. Like, he shouldn't even mentioned his father at that point in time. If you just took out I'll honor dad some other way and things like that, that would have been better.
Yeah. And then we have the part at the end of the story where it's like he's been marked, and the creepy thing that he finds very like so right like out of all of this is that it went out through the broken window, or what does it say here? Because I don't just know how it left the apartment last night, I know how it got in. When I went to the living room, to make sure it was gone and found the broken window, I noticed my front door. It was standing wide open. I don't remember it clearly, but I think maybe I got up early in my sleep and opened it, as though I might investigate a strange noise outside, or let in an old friend I'd made in the heart of the woods. And first off, I really love that this creature has followed. Like it's add this ending kind of adds an extra like level of like fear, because like you thought you were safe when you got back to human civilization. No, fucker, you're done. Like it followed you home.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, this ending does actually kind of correlate even more with like a lot of those spooky short films and videos and accounts I've seen on TikTok recently, where like someone opening a door to investigate something they see outside, or even just getting too close to a window that is closed, or just so they can look outside, and like the person, like their friend, like looks back over and say, "Hey, like, or you need to stay away from the window," and then like looks over and like the window is now open and the friend is gone. Like it was just like that. It's like within seconds the thing took him. Like it's adds that extra level of like, oh no, this could be tied to like those Appalachian stories about like the things in the woods like talking to you or like trying to get your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And like like a similar situation with Tony walking up to the tree line and then getting grabbed. Like he got too close to the thing, like basically got within reach of like the woods and got grabbed. So yeah,
Baby's crying next door was a nice touch.
Yeah.
That reference. I mean, I thought the story was going to end with that, or I thought it would end with like there's a baby, like I hear a neighbor's baby crying next door and all that. I mentioned it to her, like I guess you were up all night last night. Like it could have did something like that, and like I don't have a baby, and
or even worse, he goes to like knock on that door, keeps knocking. Then eventually, like he tries the door and it's open and it's a closet, and there's no, like it's like a storage room for the apartment.
Yeah.
Like there, it's just like, or he just like, it's, wait a minute, that's impossible. There's no like my apartment is is right at the edge of the building. There's no other apartment on the other side of that wall.
I mean, if they flesh this out a bit more, they could sell this for a horror anthology easily.
Oh yeah. Also, well, this is going to be a little segment I call Aberrant Aside. I realized while reading this story that the Blair Witch Project has a whole new meaning of horror to it. When I came to realize, because in the story it mentions that the guy came all the way down from Maine, and I actually like went and Googled up like how far the Appalachian Trail like went up to, and yeah, it goes all the way up to Maine, and it goes all the way like up to Maine and some of that. So it's like I checked where it goes. It goes past Maryland and such, and I realized, wait, the fictional town of Blair, or the Burkittsville, which was where the Blair Witch Project was supposed to take place, is like a quick hop skipping away from the Appalachian Trail itself through Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
Like, which kind of gives like the Blair Witch Project just that much more like horror for like the potential origins of what the Blair Witch creature is.
Yeah. Cool. I didn't make that connection.
Yeah, like it's just like because it may not just be like it might obviously the writers I think were probably going for more like the New England witch trial stuff.
Yeah.
But like the fact that the Appalachian Trail, the Appalachian Mountains do kind of go all the way up that way, it's like, yeah, this thing it could have easily just, especially in the newer like sequel that came out in like I think 2017 or
16,
whatever that
17, yeah.
2016, where like if you look at the creature you get grabbed, like it like. And it's definitely like more than just like a ghost of some witch. It is something else like entirely. And it's like, yeah, no, that they're I feel like maybe the newer like filmmakers were definitely like leaning into some more of the Appalachian stuff in that.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it added like reading the story. I was like, wait, because I'm a huge fan of the Blair Witch Project movies, and I was just like, wait. So. But yeah, that's my actual thoughts. So, do you have anything else, Adam?
I don't believe so. Like I said, very pleasantly surprised on this, and barring a few complaints that I had earlier, like I said, if you flesh it out and put another good, 6-7 pages to it and all that, I think it would be great enough for an anthology of some sort you could sell it to or get published.
Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of legs here to stand on. Too many legs, one might say. Oh God, it's coming at us. But yeah, it was a really cool, creepy little story, and it seems to encapsulate the spookiness that I've been hearing about and reading about for Appalachia.
Yeah.
And more broadly, just like things in the woods we ought not encounter. Like, again, my motto when it comes to forests: the woods be scary, yo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a reason we don't live in them anymore. Yeah, would hella recommend this story. I also think I now have a new website to like read creepypastas from. Because like if this is any indication of like the quality of the creepypastas from that site, I think I'm in for a good time. So
I'm glad to hear we haven't hit peak creepypasta yet.
Yeah. I assume your opinion of the story hasn't changed.
No, not at all. If anything, as we were discussing, I think it's improved even more.
All right. That I think will do it for this week's episode. So if you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted, whether it be on Podbean, Facebook, YouTube, or Tumblr. We're all on Twitter, I think.
Yeah.
Adam, where can people find you on Twitter?
Oh, we are at RP Exchange. Also, I mentioned beforehand, I'm with the Role Playing Exchange. Honestly, it's a podcast that just keeps a gaming group together. Essentially, we start out doing, talky episodes about role-playing games. We do actual plays. There's not a lot of those out in the internet, are there? And recently, we've started doing like a character creation segment on our show that you made it on. You've been on 2 of the 4 or 5 episodes we've recorded so far that I call RPX Roll Up, where we go through character creation for the games that we have on our bookshelves that just sit there unloved, and we're trying to give them some love. But yeah, you can also, we got Facebook, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not as diligent on it, unfortunately, but we're at facebook.com/the Role Playing Exchange. And yeah, you can hear on pretty much all of our podcasts, you can hear all of us. If that makes sense. Like we appear on each other's shows quite often.
Yeah. And I'm at Review Cultist on Twitter. If you'd like to send us emails, you can go to aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's ALDENTERIGAMORTIS@gmail.com. Where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, spooky things, SCPs. You creep it, we'll peep it. Yeah.
I like that.
Thank Gamer in Yellow for that motto, that new slogan. And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon, look up Al Dente Rigor Mortis, and select the package tier you'd like to support us at. We have $2 and $5 tier. with special episodes, early access, extra content. To our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay. And as always, we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely, because without your listenership, it'd be like screaming into the void of some Appalachian eldritch horror's face.
With too many teeth.
Too many goddamn teeth. And to Brandon Faircloth and creepypastastories.com. If you didn't write these stories and post them on the website and to share with people online, we really wouldn't have much of a show because we'd have nothing to talk about. So thank you. And Adam, thank you for coming on here and diving back into some Appalachian horror folklore with a creepypasta that is connected to such a thing.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
And I'm Adam.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.
Cue baby crying.